Good morning and welcome back. Left you off with a little cliffhanger yesterday. If you remember there, we were talking about how the Allies had closed in around Hitler and the Soviets were bombarding his city from above. The Allies were closing in to Berlin as well. He had nowhere to go. So the popular story, or the story that I will accept, the history accepts, is that Hitler committed suicide, right, by gun, and had his wife take cyanide. He cyanide and poisoned his dogs as well. He had a really big thing for dogs. His favorite dog there, Blondie, and her pups. But according to other stories, or people choose to believe, is the Hunting Hitler documentary that Discovery has, or History Channel has. It is interesting if you looked at it or watched it. So Hitler, back to where I was at. So Hitler had a plan to not just take over Europe, but take over the entire world. So after Europe, he was going to go down to South America. And he believed that he could go to South America, make a colony or make a landing there, and then march north through Central America into actual America. He knew that he couldn't make a direct invasion of America itself. Much too dangerous, much too difficult. Too difficult, too much logistics there. So even before he was done in Europe, he began sending supplies. They built buildings. They had people in countries in South America. The most notable was Argentina. And it was believed that he would start in Argentina, work his way around in South America, go up to Central America, then go up to America. So there are people that believe that after the suicide attempt, Hitler actually left Germany, traveled to Spain, because Spain was neutral in the war, but they were very much pro-Nazi. The king at the time, there, the leader, he was very much a big fan of Hitler, so he was pro-Nazi, even though he was technically neutral. And they believe that this is Hitler, they believe he hung out for a little while in Spain, and then made his way from Spain to some islands off the coast of Africa, and then by submarine went from there to Argentina. And that show is interesting because in Argentina today, you can go to Argentina today, and you can actually see there are Nazi swastikas in different villages. There are villages in Argentina that speak only German. Here we are in South America, a predominantly Spanish population outside of Portuguese spoken Brazil. But you have pockets of Argentinians and Argentines and pockets of Europeans living in Argentina that speak only German. You have communities that have swastikas. You have bunkers out in the jungles. It is very interesting to see. And it is documented that there were some ranking officials of the Nazi war party that actually did escape down to Argentina. Some of them were found in their escape route. Some of them were found in Argentina. But they did actually make it down there. So the plan was in place for them to go to Argentina. The question is, did Hitler actually go? And I'm of the belief that he did not. I will accept history and say, hey, he shot himself there and committed suicide and in that bunker. But the interesting thing is we don't actually know. We don't have his body. We don't have records of any photographs of him after he committed suicide by the Russians. The actual skull that they submitted was tested for DNA, and it was not a man's skull, so it was a woman's skull. So was that Eva Braun's? We don't know. Anyway, we'll accept it at that. So Hitler commits suicide. The war's over in Europe, all right? And in in May. Technically, it was May 2nd, 1945, I believe. Let me see, got to find it. Yeah, May the 7th, 1945. We call that VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. The reason why it's not complete victory is because Japan wasn't done yet. So after Victory in Europe Day, VE Day there, President Truman is going to meet back up with Stalin. He goes to Stalin and Britain as well, but Britain's got a new player also. Britain has a new prime minister his name is Clement Attlee. So he meets up with Stalin and with Attlee. This is Truman now. And they're going to try to decide what's going to go down with Japan. What are we going to do? They all were convinced that unconditional surrender was the only option. But the question was how to do it. So they meet at a thing called the Potsdam Conference, Potsdam, Potsdam Conference. It's a meeting there, and they actually have what they call the Potsdam Declarations, or whatever it was. And in this meeting, they decide that the best way to proceed is by atomic bomb. And this was a big decision. This was a decision that weighed heavily on Truman. And if you read anything about Truman, he went back and forth, because the question was how to defeat Japan. There was always the question, or always the option of amphibious landing, but that would have cost a lot of men, that would have cost a lot of money, and it would have been a lot of time to be able to go city by city, clearing out the Japanese islands. So the only other alternative, or one of the big alternatives, was the atomic bomb. The Americans have been working on an atomic bomb for many years. And of course, the atomic bomb in general, it was just the basics of it, the science of it, is splitting an atom in two. And the force of splitting an atom in two would then set off an explosion, and the explosion would cause a massive sonic boom and whatever. You could look that up if you wanted to. And they've been working on it for a long time, something called the Manhattan Project. In fact, in Tennessee, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, all right, on the way to Knoxville, and if you get on I-40 and go east towards Knoxville, you go right through Oak Ridge, and that was actually one of the big facilities they used to test, not the actual effects, but to, I guess, build. And then out in Arizona and other states in the West, they tested parts of the atomic bomb to see how it would work. They get it all together, and they send out a secret message that an atomic bomb was going to be the way that they would work, the way that they would attack. So they begin planning, begin looking, they do some recon. They find that the optimal city to do this was a city called Hiroshima, or Hiroshima, however you want to pronounce it there. And so Hiroshima was the target for this atomic bomb. They had two atomic bombs that were made. They were nicknamed Fat Boy and Little Man, I believe it was the two there. And so the first one they're going to drop off at Hiroshima. Hiroshima was a big-time production facility, and they said, hey, if we can hit that and level that, it'll cripple the Japanese ability to fight. And so they do. August the 6th, 1945, a pilot by the name of Paul Tibbets has a B-29 bomber that he called the Enola Gay. It was nicknamed after, it was named after his mother. And he flies a single plane, flies over Hiroshima there, and drops the bomb. The bomb explodes and absolutely devastates the city of Hiroshima. And you can see some pictures on page 507. That's a picture of Nagasaki. I've got photos on my PowerPoint there of the famed shadow people. And the shadow people was outlines of people when the radiation and when the blast hit, it disintegrated people and left a mark on the concrete. It's pretty gruesome to think about. Now, obviously, it doesn't show anything, but it's pretty eerie to see. If you look on that PowerPoint, it's just outlines. Almost like when you watch maybe like cartoons or something like that, when you see like outlines of people's body and they kind of draw outlines, it's kind of what it is. It's kind of creepy to see, to look at. But that's what it was. And it was a huge toll. And I'll throw a link there. Prager, you did a video about was it wrong to drop the atomic bomb and all the decision that Truman had to go into. But he did. He drops a bomb on Hiroshima, and Japan refuses to surrender. They say, nope, we're not doing it. So Truman gives the okay. He's got his second one. He's going to drop his second bomb. And this time it's on the city of Nagasaki. And this one here was dropped. Charles Sweeney was the pilot there. His B-29 named the Boxcar, and dropped this bomb on Nagasaki. Similar thing. It was a big production town. It wasn't just a random target. It wasn't just for civilian casualties. There were civilian casualties in both. But it was meant to weaken the Japanese fighting resolve. Well, after the second bomb is dropped, the Japanese Emperor Hirohito, he surrenders, gives out his unconditional surrender. So September the 2nd, 1945, on the USS Missouri, which, by the way, USS Missouri was a ship that was attacked in Pearl Harbor. And they used a ship that was attacked in Pearl Harbor kind of as a little stick it to them there. But September 2nd, 1945 becomes known as VJ Day, Victory in Japan Day. So when you look back, so World War II is over. All right, they surrender. Europe is surrendered. Japan has surrendered. And so now it's time to step back and look. And when you step back and look, when you include civilians, when you include fighting from disease, or death from disease, death from civilians, death from fighting, you're talking about some 50 million people were either killed. I take that back. They're killed. Yeah, 50 million women, 50 million men, women, and children killed as a result of this, with millions more maimed for life. It was a huge death toll. We in the world sat back and looked at it and thought, how in the world could we become so good at killing each other? And unfortunately, it's what happened. All right, and the Bible talks about from whence come wars and fightings among you, come they not hence. It talks about there when people war, when they talk about it talks about when they're drawn away of their own lusts, and it talks about there. It's basically, when there is a sin nature in people, there is going to be conflict. All right, we know that. You can see that as simple as when you are fighting with maybe your brothers or sisters, and you have conflict there. Well, where does that conflict come from? Right? You don't just fight because it's just random fighting, or right? You don't just designate, okay, well, today we're going to argue about this toy, or tomorrow we're going to argue about this video game time, or whatever it might be, right? There's a sin nature in us, and whether it's greed, whether it's jealousy, whether it's just plain, we don't want to be around them right now, right? Maybe you're sitting there in your quarantine and you say, yes, that's exactly how I feel. You might feel that way, but it stems from this conflict that we have, stems from our sin nature. And you look back even before World War II, right? You think about the Kellogg-Brand Pact, right? The Kellogg-Brand Pact that outlawed war, where they say we will make war illegal. It sounds good on paper, but they try to deny the inevitable. That we as humans have a sin nature. We're born with it. We can't get away from it. There is no getting around it. And so for the world, we step back and look, and this was the end result. This was the result of where sin nature could take us. And that's not even including the idea, or it is including, but it's not even thinking about the idea of the Holocaust. It's thinking about a lot of the genocidal events that happened underneath the layers of just war, of just fighting, of just destruction. And it's something that we need to think about as Christians, because we as Christians have a responsibility to, as the Bible says, live peaceably with all men. Now, obviously, we don't have to be, the Bible talks about, turn the other cheek. The Bible talks about being sure that we are as hospitable as possible to other people, that we're to love our enemies, right? That's a pretty harsh thing to do, isn't it? Or not harsh, but hard thing to do. Where do we balance that? Right now, when our values are attacked, or when our families are attacked, there is plenty of principles in the Bible that says you can defend your property. But one thing we need to know, from as simple as our brothers and sisters, we need to remember that we are supposed to be those that love one another. We're supposed to be those that care for one another. We're supposed to be ones that prefer and honor one another, not tear each other down. And I know it's very easy to do, is it not? It's very easy to nitpick at somebody. It's very easy to get under that brother or sister's skin. But I want to encourage you, especially right now that the time is very fitting, I want to encourage you to try to strive, maybe this week, maybe this weekend. I think this lesson's supposed to pop down on a Friday. Maybe your goal this weekend, or maybe this goal for the next week, or for this quarantine session, try to be as loving and try to be as caring as possible. Because there's a lot of hate in the world. There's a lot of problems in the world. And we as Christians are not supposed to be like that, right? We're supposed to be light. We're supposed to be salt in a lost and dying world. And today, unfortunately, we're reduced to social media. We're reduced to online chat rooms. And there is a great avenue for outreach there. There's people that are searching for a hope like they've never searched for before. And maybe you could be that hope. Maybe you could be that light. Maybe you could be that something, that truth that someone is looking for. But if all we do is argue and bicker and and go back and forth with people online, much less Christians. Could you imagine? They look at Christians and we bicker and go back and forth or whatever it might be. They say, what is that, right? There's no sense in following after that. So I want to challenge you. Do your best to love, honor, and prefer one another. All right, do your best, because we've seen the results. 50 million people lost their lives, millions other maimed and displaced from their homes. And we thought World War I was bad with death and destruction. It pales in comparison to what World War II did. As far as American lives, we're talking about 292,000 American lives were lost in this struggle for freedom. No civilian lives lost. Thankfully, the Lord protected us from that, right? And there were some at Pearl Harbor, but outside of that, no civilian lives lost. God protected us there. But even still, people look back at the end of this, and America would understand that being vigilant in peacetime was just as important as being vigilant in wartime. And that ends chapter 22. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to get chapter test reviews done, and I've got to figure out exactly how to do that there. I think what I'm going to do is just have a little video just going through some questions and answers, maybe throw up a quizzes for you or something that you can go through. And I don't want to give you every answer, obviously, and I've got to figure out exactly what to do as far as test-wise, as far as in the works. But like I said, we're continuing like normal. We're going to have tests in here. Going to try to get some quizzes going up for you as well. You got homework every day. You see that on the Google Classroom with the assignments. Stay up to date. Stay involved. All right. Stay checked in. But that concludes chapter 22. So we'll have a test, and after that, jump into chapter 23, how America, and specifically America, rebuilds and how we make changes following World War II. All right. Check back in with you later.